Hello everyone, and welcome to the virtual studios of safelyinvestinrealestate.com. My name is James Gage, and I'll be your host for today's training on how to never get into legal trouble when investing in real estate, how to bulletproof your real estate investing in 3 easy steps. But before we get started, folks, what I want you to do is grab a pen and paper, because I want you to take copious amounts of notes today, because the information I'm going to be giving you is going to be immediately usable information that you can do in your day-to-day real estate investing. So if there's any background noise, I would respectfully request that you shut the door. If you have a cell phone, maybe if you could put it on mute, that'd be great, because you don't want any distractions when it comes to this training. We're going to be spending hopefully about 60 minutes together, and I'm going to be giving you a lot of jam-packed material that I've used in my real estate investing for the last 28 plus years. But before we get started, we need to do a few housekeeping rules. And the first thing I want to talk to you about is to tell you what I'm not liable for. And this will all make sense in a little bit, so don't worry about it. But this is just a disclaimer. We at Gage Consulting Group, JAG Publishing, do not provide tax or legal advice and accept no liability. Basically, all I'm saying to you is that we're rendering an opinion based on my experience as a real estate investor for going on 29 years now. I'm dating myself. And that you should, anything you learn, you should pass by a competent attorney and or CPA. What to expect? Here's my promise. I value your time. I always say that if you don't respect your time, nobody else will. We only have 24 hours in a day. If we don't leverage it and use it proportionally, then guess what? We've missed out. So I want to tell you exactly what I'm going to be delivering in this training today, and my promise to you. With our time together today, you will receive immediately usable information that you can incorporate in your investing model. I don't want you to think this is going to be a big pitch fest to try to sell you something. However, if I do deliver my promise, at the end I will have an offer for you, but not until I go ahead and give you that immediately usable content. And I want you to hold me to that. How 5 minutes of investigation can save you a heap of legal trouble. How you can save thousands of dollars for legal advice if you know how. Different options and tactics to use if you're accused of wrongdoing. Why you may not be getting what you pay for when you're seeking the counsel of a lawyer. I want to make sure I have the right group of people here, so if you came for this and this is the reason that you're here, just go ahead and yell out to the computer. Even though I may not hear you, just say, yes, that's what I'm here for, because when I usually do these things live, people will put in the chat box over on the right-hand side, heck yeah, lay it on me, give it to me. I'm ready. My pencils are sharpened, so just go say heck yes, and we'll get on with the good content here. Now, who am I? Now, first of all, you'll notice on my slides here I have everything piled on. It'll make sense to you in a few minutes, because I want to make sure that you're able to write down everything that I have on these screens. So if I just go by one bullet point by one bullet point, you may not have enough time to write it down. And like I said, we only have about 60 minutes together. But I think it's very important that you know who you're dealing with. I think qualifications are very important, because I look at speaking into people's lives a high responsibility. I look at it as it's a very high bar for me to have to overcome, and I want to make sure that people know my background and I'm not just wasting their time. So I've been a real estate investor now for over 25 plus years, going on probably 29. That's more like it. Whoever prepared these slides left out about 4 years, but it's been almost 29 years now. I have a master's in taxation, a bachelor's in accounting, and I have what's called a JD, a Juris Doctorate. Even though I never practiced law, I did go to law school, and I do have that Juris Doctorate, which has helped me through my real estate investing career, as you'll see me pulling from as we go on in this training. I've been a federal and state arbitrator. I've actually represented U.S. congressmen and their families. If you ever go to one of my websites, I have all the newspaper clippings and all the validations on the site showing that whatever I say, I've done. I'm an author, a speaker, and even a radio personality. I can be heard every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on XM Satellite Radio, Channel 128 on MYB Talk. So that's a little bit about me. But the most important thing of all my qualifications here is I've been an active real estate investor, not agent, but I also have a real estate license to sell real estate. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on also. But the most important credentials here is the real estate investor with over 29 years now, going on 29 years of experience. I think that's the one thing I'm most proud of. So why did I put this training together? Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's widespread and it's escalating. You shouldn't be afraid to invest in real estate because people have scared you to death. I mean, when I first got started, people thought I was crazy. They thought when you could use leverage to invest in real estate, you must be doing something wrong, or you're breaking the law, or you're just not doing anything above board. And today we're starting to see that trickle back in because of the crash of the real estate market in 2007 and all those, what we call liar loans and so forth. But I don't want you to be put off because this is a tremendous time to invest in real estate, whether that be in traditional real estate investing or in lease options or other forms of leveraged investing. Not investing with certain strategies because you were told you couldn't do that in your state or it's illegal. This misinformation is hurting your bottom line. This is the thing that really gets my goat, so to speak, is when I go to real estate investment clubs and I hear all these people saying, well, I was told that you can't do that in this state. And 9 times out of 10, that's absolutely wrong, and that's misinformation. And as I have on this next bullet point, real estate investment clubs and attorneys. See, the thing about attorneys is this. Just like real estate agents, most real estate agents, they're only taught how to control real estate 2 ways, buying and selling. Same thing in law school. They teach you about transactions, about buying and selling. They don't teach you about creative real estate. They don't teach you about things out of the norm, should I say. So I always tell people, when you engage a lawyer, what do you think they're looking out for? And most people say, well, they're looking out for my best interest. And I said, well, that's true, and especially if you're dealing with an ethical attorney. But 9 times out of 10, what they'll tell you, even if you ask them to be brutally honest with you, in first position when they're dealing with a client is protecting their law license. They're not going to do anything that they're not familiar with or it's possible gray area. That's why I always encourage people that when you deal with attorneys in real estate, that you make sure that they have a good grasp of creative real estate and leverage real estate investing. Next thing, you can use this information I'm about to share with you in every aspect of your life, not just in real estate, but in if maybe you have a small business on the side, maybe you're interested in getting involved in a small business. Well, you can take these principles and use them in those arenas also. Well, there's a lot of information overload, as we just said in the last slide. A lot of real estate investment clubs, even though right now they're probably 50% of where they were as far as how many are out there before the real estate bust. But there's still a lot of real estate investment clubs out there, and the majority of them are good clubs. But you'll run into some clubs that are just basically information pushers. They'll have people that come and sell from the stage time and time again. They'll charge you a membership fee to come, and all you're paying for really is a pitch fest. Okay, but then you'll find the real estate clubs that are out there with investors that want to help fellow investors. They want to network. They want to make sure that people are getting the right information, and it's a good support group also. Attorneys and physicians. What they have in common might surprise you. And this is alluding back to what I was saying about protecting their licenses and so forth. Same thing with physicians. A lot of physicians will become, excuse the pun, but gun shy. They won't be aggressive with their patient because they're a fear of litigation. Same thing with attorneys. Even though they're an attorney, you would think they wouldn't have much fear of being litigated, but that's not the case. It's all about keeping that license that they worked so hard for. So a lot of times, because we live in a very litigious society, as most of you know, they're not willing to go the extra mile for their clients. Associations. There are a lot of associations out there. Now, associations can be good and bad. but for most of them, I would tend to say that they're probably not good for the average real estate investor, even though a lot of them are coming out and saying that they have lobbyists up in Washington looking out for real estate investors and so forth. But you get a lot of misinformation from these organizations also. They'll go ahead and parrot back things to investors saying as if they were already laws on the books. When they're just actually debating the issue in Washington. So I'd be very careful about associations. Gurus. Well, there are a lot of gurus out there that are telling you can do things, but guess what? It's a bunch of generic information. And I'm not against information. I think information and education is great. It's all good. You just have to know which ones that you can glean from and take from in order to build up your portfolio of knowledge in the way you're looking to invest. And then that leaves everyone else. It seems like everybody else has an opinion on things, and that's fine. Everybody has their opinion. They're entitled to it. I respect it. But just because somebody says something doesn't mean it's exactly true. Here's some startling legal statistics for you. How many litigations are filed each year? Well, I did a little bit of research, and the American Bar Association study over 10 years ago, I went back as far as 10 years, put the number of litigations at 20 million. In 2010, that number grew to 42 million. Today, it's at 84 million. And guess what? Of those, 28 million had to do with real estate. That's right, 28 million lawsuits in relation to real estate. Housing court dockets are full to capacity. Landlords are bringing their tenants to court at alarming rates. And I'm saying, and I'm sure you'll agree after watching this training, that a lot of this can be prevented if they would just do a few minutes of investigatory work. Now, before we get started into the meat and potatoes of this training, how does our legal system work? And it works basically in one simple phrase. It depends on that famous word is. What does is mean? Because that's really where a lot of the litigation comes from, is that a lot of the statutes, codes, and laws are really not clear, or they can be misinterpreted or interpreted wrong. There's a thing in law that we call good faith and spirit of the law. These are two words that a lot of times people will use in their litigation complaints, or you'll hear them throw around. Well, I acted in good faith, or in the spirit of the law. Okay, so what do those two things really mean? It means that it's a very ambiguous word. Because if I put 10 people in a room and ask you what the definition of good faith is and go around the room, I bet you we'll get 10 different answers. And that's how, unfortunately, it works in the legal system also. It depends on what is meant by the word is. What did you mean by good faith? Another one, I'm looking here on my desk here. Here's a big one that's used in contracts. Whereas time is of the essence. Well, what the heck does that mean? Whereas time is of the essence. I could say time is of the essence to me means I want it done tomorrow. But we put these words in contractual law, and it opens up a lot of ambiguous things that people can read into. Now, in our legal system, remember, courts interpret law. They do not make law. They just interpret the law on the books. So what do they look at? When a judge is sitting behind a bench and is hearing a case, and after the judge, he or she hears the case and says, well, I'm going to take it under advisement, I'll come back with my decision. Well, what do they look at? Do they look at, okay, let's see, what's the flavor of the day? What should I rule on? What are my colleagues ruling on? How would they look at this case? Well, no, they look at case law first. Let me get this annoying icon out of the way down here. I apologize. Case law first, higher court opinions, and then finally human intellect. If anybody says that human intellect does not play a factor in the rendering of court cases, they're just fooling themselves. But the first standard should be is case law. Is there anything out there that's already been decided on this issue? whether it's in case law or higher court opinions, and then finally, human intellect. Now, encompassed in court opinions and case law are ordinances, codes from the code department, since we're talking about real estate investing. So all those things play a part. Just remember, this also happens on the federal, state, and local levels. This is basically the same system. Yeah, they vary a little bit depending on what state you're in, especially on the state level, but they're pretty much uniform. Okay, now I want to tell you a quick little story about code departments. Okay, and I call this my 3-family grill violation. And this is really how I really started looking into things, and before I started really investing in real estate. Because like most of you, when I first got started, I was listening to the gurus. I think I went to every boot camp that was available back there in the mid 80s. And one thing was a theme. It was all generic information. So I figured I'm spending good money for this training, so I might as well follow their advice. Well, I used what was called the shotgun blast mentality as far as investing goes. I figured if I would just go ahead and pull the trigger and fire that generic information, well, guess what? I'd hit something, and surely I did with this. Now, for those of you not familiar with a 3-family, up here in the Northeast in Massachusetts, basically they're just 3 apartments that are stacked on top of each other. They're usually anywhere between 80 and 100 years old. They're usually wood frame, and they're a pretty good investment because you get those 3 incomes underneath one roof, and you don't really have to go to 50 or 60 units to be able to consider a multi-family. So anyways, what I used to do is I used to do my due diligence and rent out to people that I pulled a credit check on and did a background check and met them and, did all the paperwork and move-in inspections and so forth. Well, I used to let people have pretty much the gambit as far as liberty goes. I had a lot of people that used to bring their grills, and they used to put them on their back porches. I didn't think anything of it until the fire department showed up. And the fire department showed up and said the code department had sent them out because they had noticed during one of their inspections for smoke detectors that there was a grill on my 3rd floor porch of one of my tenants, and they had it chained to the porch. Well, I found out after several tickets of $50 a day for fine. They fined me. They didn't fine the tenant because I was the owner of record, and that was illegal to do since it was a wood frame construction, and it was an ordinance on the books in the city at the time that you could not have a gas grill on a back porch. So of course I was inflamed about the situation. I called the code department and said, I didn't even get any kind of a warning or anything. They just started hitting me with $50 a day, and by the time they got to me, I had racked up 5 or 6 days. And the code department informed me if I would just had called them to find out whether or not that was allowable in the city, I could have saved myself a lot of time and money. So so what do? Well, I learned very fast that if there's a question about anything, that you call these departments and you get the answer from the horse's mouth. And as we go into this training today, you'll see what I'm talking about even more. Okay, let's see if we can get, there we go. All right. Now, you may be saying as we get on the training, you said in the training that I'm never going to be able to be litigated, I should say, with this training, with what you're telling me. And I always say no one can 100% guarantee you won't be sued, and if they do, they're a fool. But the whole essence of this training is to mitigate less litigations and less orders and code violations that you occur, I should say, as an investor. So if anybody tells you it's 100% guaranteed you'll never get sued, whether that be they're trying to sell you entity structuring or whatever the case may be, and we'll talk about that too, don't believe them. Okay, so where do you go for resources for credible information? Well, the first thing I tell people is if you're going to be a landlord is that you check with your local housing authority. They usually have some form of manual they'll sell you for very cheap. It's like maybe $25. It tells you all the lead standards. It even has samples of residential leases that you can use that are legal in your state that you use for tenants. They give you a wealth of information, what you can do, what you can't do. So that's the housing authority. You usually find that within the code department, or sometimes it's its own separate agency. Government websites. These are great on a state level. Attorney General's office is a great government website. If you're not sure whether you can do a strategy for investing in real estate or not in your state, you call the Attorney General's office. For instance, if you want to do foreclosure counseling or mediation, and you want to know if you can charge something up front before you arbitrate something for somebody, you might want to call the Attorney General's office and see if that's permissible in your state. In the state of Massachusetts, no monies can transfer hands until that process is complete, so you can't charge a retainer or a binder or anything up front. Look at legal opinions. Legal opinion, you'll see stuff like maybe Florida versus Smith. You want to check legal opinions on easements, abatement statuses, and so forth. Those of us have a track record of doing the real estate investing strategy you want to do. So if you're a member of a local real estate club and somebody's doing lease options, I suggest, and that's what you want to do, I suggest that you try to make contact with them, see if they'd be willing to share some of their knowledge with you. That's the easiest way to success, is to find something and somebody that's doing what you want to do, and just mirror them. And of course, here's a plug for my site. We'll talk more about this later, but safelyinvestinrealestate.com. And also, we talked about this earlier about a creative real estate attorney. You want to make sure that you have somebody that's versed in creative real estate. You don't want somebody just out of law school that only knows how to buy and sell real estate. You want to know. I always tell people, go to a real estate club meeting and ask if they can recommend any real estate attorneys. Sometimes you'll hit the kind of like the quinella, as I call it, from a horse racing term. You'll find somebody that's an attorney but also an investor also, and once you find those type of people, you're golden. Here's some words of wisdom to start you off with in this training. Don't listen to anyone who's not qualified to speak to your question, problem, or situation. I learned this lesson the hard way, and I can tell you many horror stories that I listened to the wrong people. And I consider myself an educated person, but you know what? Sometimes people talk a good game, and you believe them, and you go off, and guess what? They gave you some bad advice, or they didn't even know what the heck they were talking about. So I break it down to this. In other words, if you want to earn a six-figure income, don't seek the counsel of someone making $35K. Okay, now, one of the most important things for you to do to protect yourself in investing is how to leave a paper trail. Why are we doing this? Well, it's to avoid civil versus criminal litigations. We always leave a paper trail. If somebody tells us we can do something, like, let me give you an example. Let's say that you had a question on whether or not you could have a grill on a back porch of a 3-decker, and you called the code enforcement department and they told you, yep, you can. Well, you want to document every conversation you have and title it Memo for the Record. And you want to make sure that you write down the person you spoke to, the time, the date, of course, and your question that you asked them and what their response was. Okay? And then that way you have it for your records. If anybody ever comes back to you and says, well, why'd you do that? And you can say, well, I spoke to such and such on this day and this time, and they told me I could. But usually that's not enough. What I usually do is send a conversation synopsis letter. Okay? And basically what that does is it just, in a nutshell, gives them a generalization of what we talked about. And what I do is I fax it if possible. I send it USPS, United States Postal Service, certified mail with signature request, regular mail, and email if you have their email address. Why do I do all these things? Well, I don't do it on every question that I have, but I do it on the most important things that I think that maybe, in the case of the grill, well, if they give me the wrong information, I'm going to get fined. So by doing this, if anything that they told you they don't agree with, or you got it wrong or whatever, by sending it certified mail, signature requested, if they do not answer it, that means they're in a full agreement with it. Okay, and then that way, if you ever have to go into court, or if you have to ever fight a citation or whatever, you can say, hey, this is all the things I did. They never answered me back saying that I was off base. Keep all your documents and verification of letters and documents sent in a file until it's no longer relevant. Just like in tax returns, I tell people to go ahead and keep it for at least 7 years. Usually after 7 years, you're fine, because chances are things are going to change. Ordinances are going to change. Laws are going to change. If you feel strongly about it, then keep it until you don't have the property anymore. Okay, here's another example. You're trying to see if you can do a lease option in your state. Well, step one, what you would do is call your state's attorney general's office and tell them exactly what you want to do, that you want to do lease options, and if lease options are legal to do in your state on real estate. And if so, are there any parameters that you have to follow? If they give you an opinion, send the conversation synopsis letter, fax it if possible, send it through the post office, certified mail with signature requested. Always send it first class mail, and it's always good to send an email if you have their address, because the Supreme Court has ruled it's been probably about 6 years now, that anything via fax or email is considered a valid document and is treated as such in a court of law, just like it would be a hard copy of a letter or a document. Step 3, if no opinion, call your local district. So what I mean by if there's no opinion, what if they say, well, I don't know, you need to go consult an attorney. Sometimes you'll get people that say that to you, even though it's their job. They're being paid by our tax dollars to render opinions, and sometimes you'll get somebody on the phone that just doesn't want to deal. They're having a bad day or whatever. If that's the case, then call your local district attorney's office and present the same scenario. If an opinion is given, follow step 2 with letters. Okay, so most people think a district attorney's office is criminal. Well, it is. And they may say, well, we don't deal with civil and we're not going to comment on that. But if you're doing a real estate strategy, I guarantee you, if you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing, they're not going to take you to the civil arena. They're going to take you to the criminal arena. So the Attorney General's office is a great place to start. If you get no satisfaction there, they won't give you an opinion, then go to the district attorney's office. Here's another example. What if you want to know if you can do lease options on probates? And you see a recurring theme here with lease options. I do a lot of lease options. I love them. I think they're very creative way to control real estate and leverage, and you don't need a heck of a lot of money to do them. And you may say, I already know the answer to this, but I want to show you a complicated strategy. And by just telling you my philosophy on lease options, I know the answer to this, but I just want to show you something that's a little bit more complicated. Make sure you're dealing with the PR executor. Talking about probates, that these are the people that you want to deal with. All right. Call the attorney representing the estate and find out who would have to sign off on the lease option, okay? Because a lot of times people get into problems with dealing with probates, especially if they don't know if the court, because that's who handles probates, is the court, the probate court, is going to be open to a lease option. So before, spinning your wheels and doing a lot of negotiating and so forth, you want to make sure that you go ahead and find this out. Now, I'm specifically talking about lease options. I'm not talking about a straight buy. So you want to call the attorney representing the estate and find out who would have to sign off on the lease option and if the probate court has to sign off on the lease option. Right now in probate law, it really depends on how big the estate is, whether the PR, which is the personal representative, or the executor or executrix, in the case if it's a female executor, can have the power to sign off. Some states allow the people, the PRs and executors, to sign off directly. Others require the judge of probate to go ahead and have to sign off on anything, even a lease option. Okay, at that time, once you talk to all these people, you would send out the synopsis letters. That way you can go ahead and to track their responses and have them in your file. So that's an example of how to do your investigatory work when in regards to questions that are not going to be answered by government officials. It would have to be answered by people that are involved in a deal such as the one we just had the example of. So now let's talk a little bit about contracts. What is our law based on? Well, our law is based on English common law in all 49 states. And before you send me an email and say, well, you went to college and you think, Jim, there's only 49 states. No, there's 50 states, but there's one state that's not based on English common law, and that's the state of Louisiana. That's based on French law, which is a little bit different from English common law. It has a couple of different nuances in it, but for the rest of us that don't live in Louisiana and the other 49 states, all our laws are based on English common law. So what does that exactly mean? It means that contractual language in Massachusetts will generally be the same as in California or in Florida or any of those other states. So you're not going to have to worry about, well, is this contract going to be valid in my state? As long as it's based on English common law, it surely will be. What must be in a contract to make it valid? Well, there's an old joke that in law school that people or professors tell the students, and they say that, if you can't write up a valid contract on a cocktail napkin, then you shouldn't be in law school, because there's only a few things that needs to be in a contractual agreement in order to be valid. So even if you did put it on a cocktail napkin and brought it into a court of law, it should be valid. First, all parties must be in agreement after an offer has been made by one party and accepted by the other. So all parties must be in agreement. Number two, something of value must be exchanged, such as cash, services, or goods, or a promise to exchange such an item for something else of value. Okay, so financial consideration usually has to go between the parties to bind that contractual agreement and make it valid. And the third standard is there must be a clear purpose to the contract. They don't want generalizations. They don't want ambiguity. Excuse me. Boy, I'm tongue-tied tonight. But they don't want ambiguity. Let's just scratch that word. They just don't want generalization. Okay, they don't want any generalizations in contracts. They want it straight and to the point. If you use generic contracts, make sure they conform to your state and local requirements and mandates. I always get nervous when I see these fill-in-the-blank contractual agreements, aka generic contracts. Can they be used? Absolutely. But you just better make sure they conform to your state and local requirements if you're going to use those. Have your new or modified contracts reviewed by an attorney who specializes in the field you're operating in. Don't allow the attorney to reinvent the wheel. What do I mean by that? Well, attorneys are notorious for this. They'll take your contractual agreement, and instead of just drawing a line through what they don't like and writing in what they want, they'll redraft the whole agreement or the whole contract, and they'll charge you for that. And so I always tell attorneys when I'm dealing with them when I want them to review something, because I can go ahead and use a word processing program just as well as their paralegal can. So I ask them to put a line through what they don't agree with and write what they want in the contractual agreement and send it back to me, and I will do the rest. Not only will you be saving yourself money, but you'll be saving yourself a lot of time. Safeguarding contractual language. Make sure you have language in your contracts that award legal costs to the prevailing parties. So anytime you do a contractual agreement, make sure that you put that language in there, that if a disagreement arises anytime during the contractual period, that if it has to be brought to court, that the prevailing party will be awarded legal costs and attorney fees. Why do we do this? Well, it protects us. It also puts the other person on notice that you're not new kid on the block. You've been around the block a few times, and you're not going to put up with any nonsense. Make sure your contracts are in plain English. Don't use a lot of legalese, even though, yes, I've been guilty of it in my investing career. I'll try to put the million-dollar words out there to try to impress people, but I found, especially when you're dealing with people like with FSBOs, for sale by owners, the more legalese that you put in a contract, the more pages of a contract you have, the more apprehensive they become because they think you're trying to pull something on them. So just use plain English. It works fine. If the individual's first language isn't English, make sure it is explained to them in their native language. One of the things that I use is what I call my must-sign document. It's basically a disclosure. I put it together. It's a great document. And basically what it does is it covers most any potential litigation subject matter that you may come in contact with, meaning that in almost all the 50 states now we have elder laws. So when you're negotiating a contract with somebody over the age 65, you got to make sure that you cross your T's and dot your I's with them. Otherwise, they'll come back on you and say you try to take advantage of them because they're elderly. This is another one too, is I've had many, when I was in the landlording business, I had many tenants you'd bring into housing court, and you'd bring a valid lease to the judge, and they'd say, no habla. Suddenly they didn't speak English anymore. So the first time that happened to me, I made sure that I asked them and had them sign off on a disclosure that English was their first language. If it wasn't, I had somebody explain the whole contractual agreement to them in their native language. We'll talk more about the must-sign document later. Okay, in review, we'll cross your T's and dot your I's. You got to get your head in the game, and this is one of the most important things that I tell people is you got to get your head around this investing thing. It's not a hobby, it's a business, and you have to operate it that way and address it that way. You have to do your due diligence. I know a lot of people say to me, Jim, I got into investing in real estate because I wanted to free up some time, whether for my family or for personal endeavors and so forth. I just don't have the time. And as I've showed you in this training, you really don't need a lot of time. 5 minutes calling the code department, another 5 minutes of putting those letters together, especially if you've done it once. You keep a template on your computer, and basically it's just copy and paste from that point on. Believe me, 10 minutes wrapped up into a situation is a whole lot better than a lot of hours. I've seen people in litigation spend hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars with attorneys trying to map something out and get it straight away. That would only have taken them maybe 10 minutes if they had done their due diligence. They would have not done the deal or signed the contract, and they never would have got into the position they did. So you got to get your head around this, that investing is a business. It's not a game per se. It's a business. You got to treat it that way. One of the things that always reminded me when I was a landlord of that this was a business, because you always have the people, you have the best tenants in the world, but around Christmas time they're going to come to you, and 9 times out of 10 they're not going to have the rent because they tell you they have to buy their kid the G.I. Joe with a Kung Fu grip, and guess what? You may get it next month or you may not. I had to adopt the philosophy that every time a tenant didn't pay, they were taking food out of my children's mouth. And again, I believe in treating everybody with respect and with honor, but also they owe allegiance to me as a landlord and a business owner to do what's right and to do what they signed off on. So that's what you have to do, is get your head in the game, and you have to realize that this is a business. So in review, 3 steps to safety. All right, get a legal opinion from the government, or from, and when I mean the government, I mean federal, state, or local, depending on the logistics of what you're involved in. Do your own research. Don't rely on somebody else's opinion or word of mouth. Well, this guy heard this guy from broke Uncle Bob that when he had done this 25 years ago, This is what happened. So, I mean, please don't. I know it takes a little bit of time to research, but once you get good at it, it's going to be second nature to you, and it only take 5 or 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes for you to do some of this stuff. By the way, if you want to know how to do a title search, go on YouTube. I've put some great tutorials on videos on YouTube showing you how to do some of this research work. And as we get closer to the end of this training, I'm going to tell you about an offer that I have that'll even speed you up even further as far as being able to research this stuff and do it for yourself. Number 3 is document and substantiate everything. The old saying is if it's not down in black and white, it didn't happen. When you go into a court of law or you go before a selectman's board or a governmental board and you start telling them things and you don't have any kind of documentation to back it up, it all becomes hearsay and it's not admissible. And even if you have a witness, that's like the lowest rung of the what's the word I'm looking for, of the evidence scale. That's the lowest rung of the evidence scale. So you don't want to be caught there. Okay, additional protections. Is there anything you should carry as a real estate investor? Well, I always tell people if you're going to treat this like a business, you should have errors and omission insurance. It's not very expensive. You can usually call your insurance carrier that has the insurance policy on your house and let them know that, hey, I'm a real estate investor right now. In addition to, if you decide that you want to hold property, in addition to having property insurance, tell them that you want some form of errors and omission insurance. I also advocate that people get what's called an umbrella policy, because here's the dirty little secret about insurance is that just because you have insurance on a property, if somebody, God forbid, falls down the stairs and breaks their leg and everything, and the insurance pays out for that incident, there's nothing that says they can't come after you personally. So that's why I try to say that the more insurance that you have, especially in the business that we're involved in investing, the better off you are. And it's not very expensive. And again, I'm just quoting based on my experience, but I think $1 million umbrella policy cost me maybe $125 a year. So as you can see, it's well worth it. Get bonded. This is an old thing, but it's one of those old things that should become new again, getting bonded, especially if you go into properties to view. It's become rampant here in the Northeast that the latest thing that tenants are doing, bad tenants I should say, is when people are coming in to look at a property that they're interested in investing in, once the prospective buyer leaves, suddenly the tenant comes up to the landlord and says, guess what? Such and such is missing now. Somebody stole it. And the only people who were in my apartment were those people that were trying to sell the building to. So once again, getting bonded, it's not a big deal. I'll leave it up to you depending on your state and the state laws, but it's something you should consider. Get everything out of your name, because I tell people this time and time again, and I can't believe how many people still have property and businesses in their own name. And again, you should seek the advice of your tax preparer, CPA, and or attorney on what's best for you. But I tell people that the more things you have in your name, the more personal exposure you have, not only to your personal residence, but to your other assets that you may be holding personally. Let's talk about entities real quick. LLCs, Subchapter S, Subchapter C, corporations, living trust, land trust, realty trust. Well, that's a mouthful. Entities are important, but I have to respectfully disagree with a lot of the entity structuring gurus out there that try to sell you 5, 6, 7 different entities. Well, first of all, 9 times out of 10, you don't need anybody to create these for you. You can go right to your Secretary of State's office, and on their website, many times they have the forms for these entities, because guess what? Where these are going to go? They're going to go to the Secretary of State's Corporation Division anyway, so why not use their forms? So you may want to check that, number one. Number two, if you don't feel comfortable with that and you say, well, I can do it, but I really don't want to, then I would suggest that you get a competent entity structuring attorney. I would stay away from some of those internet-based ones that are really popping up now and claim to fame, and I'm not going to say their names because I don't want to get sued, but you know who they are. I mean, they charge a good chunk of money and they give you limited resources and limited support. So if you're going to pay for something, go to a competent attorney. But yes, you need to put things in entities. That way you have at least some protection from litigation and liability. Well, let's see. Did I forget one? Nope. Okay. Well, we're coming up on an hour now, and hopefully you see that I've delivered on my promise. I gave you some great content, in my opinion, but only you can answer that question for yourself. Did you get some good content? Did you get some good ideas? Did you get some things maybe that you can put in your arsenal of investing that, hey, you know what? I really never thought of that before. Well, these are some of the questions I hope I provoked in your mind today during this training. And like I said, I think I delivered on my promise. So what I want to do is I want to extend you an offer that I think will help you in this arena. But in conclusion, I'm going to start talking about my offer. But as I do, I'm still going to give you some good, immediately actionable content. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and read you a couple of questions that I received in an email today that might help you. But this is really important, this topic. If you don't learn it from me, you need to learn it from somebody who is qualified, because it's easier. And I hate to use this terminology and this analogy because a friend of mine that I've known for a number of years, actually met him at a real estate investment club that I was speaking at. He said that if he ever wrote a book on real estate investing, it was going to be entitled Plan for the Divorce Before It Happens. And that's exactly what this basically is that you want to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row before something bad happens. And by employing some of these strategies and some of these things that I advocate, I think that you will accomplish that. But like I said, only you can make that decision for yourself. In my experience, you can have the best attorney, best CPA in the world, but you can only lean on those people for so long. And you can only take their information on a regular basis if you know they're doing their due diligence. One of the things that I learned in medicine was that some of the best doctors are the best doctors to keep up on the latest technology. You have some doctors that will never crack a book after they get out of medical school. They've been taught one way and they're going to do that for the rest of their career. But then you have other doctors that say, you know what, I want to know the cutting edge stuff. I want to know what's out there. I want to be doing the best and the newest thing out there. So same thing with this. You want to make sure whoever that you decide to engage as your CPA or as your attorney, that they're on the cutting edge. They know all the new case law. They know all the ordinances. They know everything if you choose to go in that direction. My advice, for whatever it's worth to you, is that you do a blending of that. You get a competent attorney and CPA, but you keep yourself in the loop too, because I never want to be held hostage, meaning that I learned this when I created my first website for my business, is that I was spending thousands and thousands of dollars on people creating websites for me, and they held me hostage. Every time I wanted to make a change on the website or whatever, I had to go to them, and guess what? The cash register would ring. So I pulled up my big boy pants and I learned this stuff. It took me a little bit, but guess what? Now nobody can ever hold me hostage, because if I go to a webmaster and say I need this, this, and this done, and they say, oh yeah, that'll be $800, I know, no way. That's maybe 15 minutes of work, and I can go ahead and negotiate from that point. So never be held hostage. So you have to get in the trenches sometime and learn some of this stuff and keep yourself apprised. Well, here's my offer to you. And what I have is www.safelyinvestinrealestate.com. Okay, it's a lifetime membership site, meaning that you pay one price for life. There's no monthly fees, weekly fees, yearly fees, a renewing, nothing. You pay it once and that's it, and you use the site for life. Well, here's some of the things that you'll be getting on there. The complete How to Never Get into Legal Trouble When Investing in Real Estate course. That's $297 on its own. A land trust and realty trust course. Like I had said before, this is part of entity structuring. If you're in a state that uses land trust, if you're owning property, you have to be in a land trust. If you're in a state such as Massachusetts, you have to be in a realty trust. That's $197 value. What every real estate investor should know about property insurance. What you don't know may be setting you up for financial disaster. This is over 2 hours of video and resources that teach you as an investor on what type of property insurance you have. And it's not basically put out on the forum of the website by me. I interview a top insurance professional that only deals with real estate investors. And she does 2+ hours of training. Of course, I'm asking the questions from a investor standpoint, but she's given 2+ hours of video training on what you should have, limits, why you should have it. That's a $97 value. The must-sign document that I was talking about earlier today. It's basically a master disclosure. It crosses the T's and dots the I's. Says things like what we had alluded to earlier about English being a native language, or somebody had read it in the native language to them. That if they are over the age of 65, that they have somebody there representing their interests. They're not under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Now, you may be laughing at that one, but I can tell you stories of going to people's houses and they've been, they've had too many cocktails. Okay, so I can't even put a value on this document. How to build a real estate power team. Okay, now this is a training based on who you need to have on your power team, and you'll be surprised at some of the people I say you have to have on your team. That's a $47 value. Okay, now here's some of the bonuses, as I call them. Number one is webinars. We're going to have live Q&A webinars on a monthly basis, sometimes on a bi-weekly basis. It depends on what you want. A lot of people, they'll send me in questions and they'll say, I want to talk about this on the webinar. And basically what we do is we get on a live webinar. I give you the link as part of your membership site. And we talk about these things. Maybe you're involved in a deal and you need some direction. Well, that's the venue for it. Bonus number 2, which I'm very proud of, is my Negotiating for Profit course. Now, I teach you the way I negotiate. Actually, I have a book right now on Amazon, #1 on Amazon right now. It's called Negotiating with the IRS. Okay, that's my strength, is negotiating, and I brought that over into my real estate investing, and I got that from being a federal arbitrator. But in this Negotiating for Profit course, you're going to learn how I negotiate. That you're going to know within 5 minutes of talking with somebody, whether on the phone or face-to-face, whether you're going to be able to do business with them or you're on your happy way. Because, again, it's the analogy of we all have one thing in common. That's 24 hours in a day. And if we don't use it wisely and we don't leverage it, well, use your imagination what will happen. Bonus 3, how to do a title search. I show you how to do a mini title search before you go to any property, because have you ever, for those that are listening to this training that have already been in real estate or have done deals, have you ever done a deal where you've gone to the property, you've fallen in love with it, you make an offer, you start negotiating, you put all these hours into it, and then come to find out, you find out when the title search is done that there are all these encumbrances and the deal falls apart, and you've just put 70, 80 hours into a deal or less, and you walk away with nothing. Well, this is a way to get an idea if there's any encumbrances on the property before you view the property. Bonus number 4, real estate abatements made easy. Did you know every year on investment property you can petition your town or your city for an abatement on your taxes? I show you exactly what to do, what to say, where to go on these government websites to fill that out. Bonus number 5. Again, within this bonus, and I'm just calling them bonuses. This is all on the lifetime site. So they're not really a bonus, but I'm just calling them that. Must sign document, we already talked about. Landlord rental rejection template. This is a big thing now because, if you're going to reject somebody from renting to them, you better have a darn good reason. Otherwise, you may have different organizations calling you and so forth. So I give you a template that shows you how to ethically reject somebody without fear of litigation and pushback. Synopsis letter template we talked about, whether you're calling the code department or a government agency. Here's the letter template that I've put together specifically that I use and you can use too. The Attorney General letter template. If you're calling the Attorney General's office and you're trying to glean some information, this is the template that you would use. District Attorney letter template. City or town letter template. The real estate agent investing letter. Okay, this is another letter that I throw into the site. Is whether we like it or not, 95% of real estate is controlled by real estate agents. And most of the gurus out there are teaching people to stay away from real estate agents and just go after the FSBOs. Well, if you do that, you're going to starve as a real estate investor. So I've drafted this letter to send out to real estate agents that basically, number one, weeds out the real estate agents that don't want to deal with us as investors. And number two, it just makes it an easier process because we're putting all our cards on the table. Next one is the real estate agent disclosure form for investing. If you're a real estate investor, in most states, if you invest in real estate and you're an agent, you have to make full disclosure to the seller of the property which hat you're wearing. Because in most states, they feel that if a real estate agent is also a real estate investor, they have an undue advantage. And what that is that advantage? MLS usually. That's what they usually cite. So by taking this real estate agent disclosure for investing, not only is the seller of the property put on notice that you're wearing your real estate investing hat, not your agent hat. You're not looking for a listing. But it can be sent to the board of realtors, letting them know what you're doing and putting them on notice that, hey, I'm just letting you know what I'm doing before I'm doing it. Okay? Now, if you were to purchase these trainings separately, it would cost you upwards of $2,700. Okay? Or $497 just for some of these courses individually. But this lifetime website at safelyinvestinrealestate.com is just one payment of $197. That's it. $197. You have it for life. You get all the recent trainings that we do, all the updated videos that we do. It's just a plethora of information that keeps going and going and going and going. It's never stopping. The Q&As never stop. The trainings never stop. Or if you say, Jim, I don't have $197 right now, well, we've broken it down into 3 payments of $98. Okay, and I'm doing something special here that's not advertised here right now. For everybody that orders at www.safelyinvestinrealestate.com, what I'm going to do is give you one free one-on-one mentoring session with me. Once you make your purchase, send me an email. We'll put you down on the calendar on when we can speak. You write down some questions that you may have. We'll get on the phone and you'll talk to me directly, not to an employee. You'll talk to me directly and we'll get your questions answered fast. Now, my mentoring program and my mentoring sessions usually run anywhere between $180 to $250 depending on what tier of the mentoring program people sign up for. So you're getting great value. You're getting great value to be able to speak to me one-on-one. And let's face it, really in the scheme of things, $197 for what you're getting is only probably a month's trip to Starbucks. And you're getting all this information that will hopefully save you thousands and thousands of dollars in legal bills. And more importantly, it'll give you peace of mind that, guess what I'm doing is ethical, what I'm doing is moral, what I'm doing most importantly is legal. So what I want you to do right now is go over to that website, www.safelyinvestinrealestate.com. I want you to scroll down to the bottom of the page, and you will see those two options for payment. One payment of $197 or three payments of $98. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've taken up enough of your time here. We're just right about at 60 minutes. I want to thank you very much for joining me today. Hopefully you've learned something. I know I enjoy doing this for you. I love, spending time with fellow real estate investors and imparting what knowledge I have of our craft to people, whether they be novices, intermediates, or seasoned real estate investors. I always take away something, learning something new, and I'm just glad I'm able to give something back on this. So if you have any questions on anything, feel free to email me at coach@jgage.com, coach@jgage.com. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have. But once again, I encourage you to go to safelyinvestinrealestate.com, or the membership site package, and you won't be disappointed. Until next time, I hope all your deals are profitable and to your success.